entire mansion went silent. It wasn't the silence of peace, it was the heavy, suffocating silence of pure fear. In the center of the grand hallway stood Sophia, the billionaire's wife, the woman who ruled the Anderson empire with an iron fist while her husband lay dying in the room upstairs. When she spoke, the staff trembled. When she moved, everyone looked down. No one dared to look her in the eye until she arrived. Nia, a professional nurse sent from the agency to care for the sick billionaire. She walked in with her head held high, ready to do her job, but Sophia didn't see a nurse. She looked at Nia with cold disgust and treated her like a common maid, ordering her to scrub floors instead of checking patients. Nia didn't argue. She didn't fight back. She simply picked up the tray and walked toward the billionaire's room. Sophia smiled, thinking she had broken another spirit, but she was wrong, because the moment Nia entered that dark room, the moment she stepped close to the dying man, something happened that no one expected, something that would turn the fear in this mansion into a war. What did the new nurse see in the shadows of that room? Why did the billionaire's heartbeat change the moment she walked in? And what is the one deadly mistake Sophia made that she can never take back? This is not just a story of a cruel wife and a maid. This is a story of a hidden past that refuses to stay buried. Before we find out the truth, could you do me a small favor? Please click the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. It really helps us share more stories like this with you. Now, let's step into the mansion. The grandfather clock in the mahogany hallway struck 8 times. The deep, resonant chimes vibrated through the floorboards, signaling the start of the evening gathering. Inside the Anderson mansion, the air was thick, almost unbreathable. To the outside world, this was a party. Wealthy guests in tuxedos and designer gowns stood in small clusters, holding crystal glasses filled with vintage champagne. Soft jazz played from the corner, attempting to mask the tension. But beneath the music and the polite laughter, there was a current of terror. Every waiter, every cleaner, every guard stood stiffly, their eyes darting nervously toward the foot of the grand staircase. They were watching Sophia. Sophia Anderson stood there like a dark queen. She wore a floor-length black gown that hugged her figure, her diamonds glittering under the chandelier like shards of ice. She had told the world she was Adrian Anderson's devoted wife, the woman holding his empire together while he fought a mysterious illness. But the staff knew better. They knew the cruelty that hid behind her perfect smile. Just moments ago, a young server had accidentally let a drop of wine fall near the hem of her dress. The music hadn't stopped, but the room had frozen. Sophia didn't scream. She didn't make a scene. She simply leaned in and whispered something to the boy. No one heard what she said, but they saw the color drain from his face until he looked like a ghost. He backed away, trembling, his hands shaking so hard the tray rattled against his buttons. That was Sophia's power. She didn't need to raise her voice to destroy someone. She held the keys to their livelihoods, and she held the gate to the billionaire, Adrian Anderson. In the midst of this suffocating atmosphere, the heavy oak front doors groaned open, the hinges protesting against the silence. A gust of cold night wind blew into the warm hall, making the candle flames flicker. Standing in the doorway was Nia. Nia adjusted the strap of her medical bag on her shoulder. She had been sent by the medical agency on an urgent request because Sophia's personal doctor had mysteriously vanished. Nia stepped inside, closing the door against the wind. She was a woman of quiet dignity, her nurse's uniform crisp and clean. She stood tall, her face calm and unreadable. But there was something distinct about her posture. She kept her left arm tucked slightly close to her body, her hand buried deep in the pocket of her coat. It was a habit formed over 16 years, a way to hide the hard, unyielding prosthetic limb that lay beneath the fabric. She walked toward the center of the room, expecting to be greeted as a professional. Sophia turned her head slowly. Her cold, predatory eyes scanned Nia from her sensible shoes to her simple hairstyle. Her expression twisted into a look of absolute distaste. She didn't see a medical expert. She saw someone beneath her notice. "You're late," Sophia said, her voice cutting through the low hum of the party like a knife. Nia checked her watch. She was exactly on time. "I apologize, ma'am. The agency instructed me to." "I don't care what the agency said," Sophia interrupted, stepping off the bottom stair. She circled Nia, inspecting her like one would inspect a piece of damaged furniture. "So this is the specialist. You look more like someone who should be scrubbing my floors than treating my husband." A few guests nearby chuckled softly, sipping their drinks, enjoying the show. Nia tightened her grip on her bag, but her voice remained steady. "I am a certified trauma nurse, ma'am. I am here to assess Mr. Anderson's vitals." Sophia laughed. It was a cold, sharp sound. "Nurse, no, in this house you are whatever I say you are, and right now you look like help." Sophia snapped her fingers. A waiter rushed forward with a silver tray. On it sat a bowl of soup and a small glass vial of liquid. "Take this upstairs," Sophia ordered, pointing a manicured finger toward the shadows of the second floor. "Feed him, clean him, and if he speaks, ignore him. He hallucinates. Do not disturb me with his nonsense." Nia felt a spark of anger in her chest. She was a medical professional, not a servant. She opened her mouth to speak, to demand the respect her badge earned her. But then she looked up. For the first time since entering, Nia looked directly into Sophia's eyes. The world seemed to stop spinning. The jazz music faded into a dull buzz. The laughter of the guests became distant. Nia froze. Her breath caught in her throat. She knew those eyes. They were older now, framed by expensive makeup and false lashes, but the malice in them was exactly the same. In an instant, Nia's mind was dragged back 16 years. She saw smoke. She felt the blistering heat of a raging fire. She heard the sound of her brother screaming her name. She remembered a younger woman, a woman who had dated her brother, tricked him into signing over his small company, and then walked away as the house burned down. A woman who had watched Nia lose her arm and her family in a single night. It was her. It was Sophia. Nia's blood turned to ice. "It's her," Nia thought, her heart hammering against her ribs. "The woman standing in front of me isn't just a cruel wife, she is a killer." Sophia noticed Nia staring. She narrowed her eyes. "What are you looking at? Did you hear me? I said take the tray upstairs, Maid." Nia lowered her head quickly. She bit the inside of her cheek to keep from screaming. She couldn't react. Not now. If she fought back, Sophia would throw her out, and she would lose the only chance she had ever had to get justice for her brother. Nia swallowed her pride. She swallowed her rage. "Yes, ma'am," Nia whispered. "Good," Sophia sneered. "Use the service stairs. I don't want you seen by my guests." Nia took the heavy silver tray with her right hand. Her prosthetic left hand remained hidden in her pocket. She turned away from the light, away from the music, and walked toward the darkness of the staircase. She wasn't just a nurse anymore, and she wasn't a maid. She was a ghost from Sophia's past, and she had just walked right into the enemy's heart. The climb upstairs felt like walking into a different world. As Nia ascended, the air grew colder. The smell of expensive perfume and champagne was replaced by the stale, clinical scent of old medicine and neglect. The hallway leading to the master bedroom was long and dark. There were no fresh flowers here, no bright lights. It felt like a prison wing. Nia reached the heavy wooden door at the end of the hall. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for the handle, not out of fear, but out of adrenaline. She was standing in the house of her brother's killer. She pushed the door open. The hinges let out a low, long squeal that echoed in the quiet wing. The room was vast, but the heavy velvet curtains were drawn tight, blocking out the moonlight. The only light came from a small, dim lamp on the bedside table. In the center of the massive bed lay a figure. Adrian Anderson, the billionaire, the man the world thought was simply resting. Nia stepped closer, her nurse instincts taking over. She set the tray down on the table quietly. She looked at the man. He was pale. His skin looked clammy, stretching tight over his cheekbones. He looked less like a powerful CEO and more like a skeleton wrapped in silk sheets. His breathing was shallow, a rattle in his chest that indicated deep weakness. "Mr. Anderson," Nia whispered softly. There was no response. Just the uneven rhythm of his breath. He was in a deep, drug-induced stupor. Nia reached out to check his pulse. She placed her warm, living fingers against his cold wrist. His pulse was weak, thready. "She's killing you," Nia whispered to herself, looking at the vial of medicine on the tray. "Just like she killed my brother." Nia felt a wave of pity. He was just another victim in Sophia's web. She leaned over to adjust his pillow, to make him more comfortable before she decided what to do with the medicine. But as she moved the blanket, the dim light of the lamp caught a glint of silver. It was something resting against his chest, tangled in the open collar of his pajama shirt. A silver chain. Nia froze. Her eyes locked onto the object attached to the chain. It was a locket. Old, tarnished silver, worn smooth by time, but it wasn't the metal that made Nia's heart stop. It was the design engraved on the front, a dove with a broken wing. Nia gasped. Her hand flew to her mouth to stifle a cry. The room spun around her. She knew that locket. She knew every scratch, every curve of that engraving. 16 years ago, after the fire, Nia had been left on the streets. Injured, one-armed, and starving. She had collapsed on a sidewalk in the rain, waiting to die. But a woman had stopped her car. A kind, wealthy woman who didn't look at her disability with disgust, but with love. That woman had taken Nia to the hospital. She had paid for the surgery that saved Nia's life. She had paid for Nia's nursing school. She had given Nia a future when she had nothing. That woman wore this exact locket every single day. She used to tell Nia, "This broken bird reminds us that we can still fly, even when we are hurt." That woman was Mrs. Anderson, Adrian's mother. Nia's mind raced. Mrs. Anderson had passed away 2 years ago. Nia had cried for days. She never knew Mrs. Anderson had a son. She never knew the famous billionaire was her son. Nia reached out with a shaking hand and gently touched the locket on Adrian's chest. It was warm from his body heat. "You," Nia whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "You are her son." Tears pricked Nia's eyes. This wasn't just a job anymore. This wasn't just about revenge against Sophia anymore, the woman who saved Nia's life. This was her child. This helpless, dying man lying in front of her was the legacy of the only person who had ever loved Nia after the fire. Fate had not just brought Nia here to destroy an enemy. Fate had brought her here to pay a debt. Nia gripped the locket, her thumb tracing the broken wing. The sight of it pulled her away from the dark room, away from the mansion, and dragged her memory back in time. Back to the night where her life ended and a new one began. As the shadows of the room deepened, the sound of the torrential rain from 16 years ago began to fill her mind. The silence of the bedroom dissolved, replaced by the relentless roar of a downpour. The smell of stale medicine vanished, overtaken by the scent of wet asphalt and city smog. Nia closed her eyes, and suddenly she wasn't a 32-year-old nurse standing in a billionaire's mansion. She was 16 again. She was cold, she was alone, and she was broken. The memory was sharp, cutting through her mind like broken glass. It was 3 days after the fire, 3 days after Sophia, the woman her brother had loved, the woman who had smiled at him while signing the insurance papers, had walked away from the flames that consumed their family home. Sophia had taken the bank accounts, the property deeds, and the life of Nia's brother. Nia had survived, but not whole. A falling beam had crushed her left arm, severing it just below the elbow. Now 16-year-old Nia sat huddled under the concrete shelter of a bus stop in the heart of the city. The rain came down in sheets, blurring the streetlights into streaks of neon. She pulled her oversized, soot-stained jacket tighter around her body, trying desperately to hide the bandaged stump of her left arm. She felt like a monster. She felt invisible. People rushed past her with umbrellas, their eyes sliding over her as if she were just another pile of trash left on the curb. She was hungry, but the hunger was a dull ache compared to the hollowness in her chest. She had no family, no home, no name. Sophia had erased her existence. A sleek black sedan splashed through a puddle and slowed to a stop right in front of the bus shelter. Nia shrank back against the graffiti-covered wall, terrified. She thought it might be the police or worse, Sophia coming back to finish the job. The back window rolled down with a soft electric hum. A woman looked out. She had silver hair pulled back in an elegant bun and eyes that held a universe of sadness and kindness. It was Mrs. Anderson. "Child," the woman called out, her voice barely audible over the drumming of the rain. Nia didn't move. She trembled, pressing her back harder against the cold concrete. I don't have any money," she stammered, her voice cracking. Mrs. Anderson didn't simply drive away like everyone else. She opened the car door. Ignoring the rain that immediately soaked her expensive coat, she stepped out onto the sidewalk. She walked straight to Nia and knelt down on the dirty pavement, ruining her dress without a second thought. "I didn't ask for money," Mrs. Anderson said softly, her eyes searching Nia's soot-stained face. "I asked why a child is sitting in the dark when the world is so big." Nia looked at the woman, stunned. "I have nowhere to go," she whispered, tears finally spilling over, mixing with the rain on her cheeks. "My brother, he's gone, and look at me." She shifted, revealing the empty sleeve of her jacket. "I am broken." Mrs. Anderson didn't flinch. She didn't look away in disgust. Instead, she reached out and gently touched Nia's shoulder. She leaned in, and the silver locket around her neck swung forward, the dove with the broken wing catching the light of the street lamp. "A bird with a broken wing is still a bird, my dear," Mrs. Anderson said, her voice firm but gentle. "It just needs a safe tree to heal. You are not garbage, and you are not broken, you are just wounded." She held out her hand. "Come with me." That was the moment Nia's life changed. She took the woman's hand, not knowing that this simple act of kindness would one day lead her to save the life of this woman's son. But the journey wasn't easy. Mrs. Anderson didn't take Nia to the grand Anderson mansion. She sensed the trauma radiating off the girl. Nia flinched at loud noises. She shook uncontrollably when people looked at her. The grand mansion, with its staff and parties, would have destroyed her fragile mind. Instead, the car drove for hours, leaving the noisy city behind, winding up into the quiet hills. They arrived at a small, secluded cottage surrounded by a garden of wild herbs. This was the home of Mrs. Anderson's sister, a retired military nurse named Auntie Rose. Auntie Rose was nothing like Mrs. Anderson. While Mrs. Anderson was soft and maternal, Rose was made of steel and leather. She lived alone, she spoke little, and she didn't believe in pity. "This is the girl," Rose asked, standing in the doorway, wiping her hands on a rag. "She needs a place to heal, Rose," Mrs. Anderson said. "She needs to learn how to fly again." For the next 2 years, that cottage became Nia's world. It was a place of tough love. Auntie Rose didn't help Nia do the easy things. When Nia struggled to tie her shoelaces with one hand, crying in frustration, Rose didn't tie them for her. She sat on the porch, sipping tea and watched. "Pick it up," Rose would say calmly. "I can't," Nia would scream, throwing the shoe across the room. "I only have one hand." "Then make that one hand stronger than two," Rose would reply, her voice unyielding. "The world will not wait for your arm to grow back, Nia. Sophia took your family, but she did not take your will. Cry later. Adapt now." It was harsh, but it was exactly what Nia needed. Pity would have kept her a victim. Challenge made her a warrior. Under Rose's training, Nia stopped hiding her arm. She learned to do everything: cook, clean, dress, and even administer first aid with a single hand. She became faster, sharper, and more observant than anyone with two hands. Then came the day of her 18th birthday. Mrs. Anderson visited the cottage, carrying a long, rectangular box. "You have healed," Mrs. Anderson said, placing the box on the kitchen table. "But now you need armor." Nia opened the box. Inside lay a prosthetic arm. It wasn't the advanced, skin-like silicone limbs that rich people wore. It was a custom-made, heavy-duty medical prosthetic. Hard plastic, reinforced joints, steel cabling inside. It looked industrial, it looked strong. "It is heavy," Mrs. Anderson warned as she helped strap it onto Nia's stump. Nia lifted it. It felt cold against her skin. It felt dead, but when she clenched the mechanical fingers, the grip was unbreakable. "It is not part of me," Nia whispered, looking at the plastic limb. "Make it part of you," Mrs. Anderson said, placing her hand over the prosthetic. "This arm, it won't feel pain, it won't burn. It is your shield, Nia. It is your iron hand. Use it to help those who cannot help themselves." Nia looked at the locket around Mrs. Anderson's neck again. She finally understood. The broken bird didn't stop flying, it just learned to fly differently. From that day on, Nia dedicated her life to the mission. She went to nursing school funded by Mrs. Anderson, but she didn't want to work in sterile city hospitals. She wanted to be where the pain was. She took charge of Mrs. Anderson's charity, running free medical camps in the poorest villages, helping amputees, burn victims, and those whom society had thrown away, just like she had been thrown away. She became a legend in the camps, the nurse with the iron hand. The memory faded slowly, the sound of the rain turning back into the rhythmic, shallow breathing of Adrian Anderson. Nia opened her eyes. She was back in the dim bedroom. The ghost of the 16-year-old girl was gone, replaced by the woman who now sat beside the dying billionaire. She looked down at the locket in her hand, her thumb tracing the broken wing. Then she looked at her left arm, the hard, plastic arm hidden beneath her sleeve. "You gave me this shield, Mrs. Anderson," Nia whispered to the empty room. "And now I am going to use it to save your son." She stood up, her face setting into a mask of determination. The flashback had clarified everything. She wasn't just here by chance. She was here because destiny had called an adept. She turned her attention to the vial of poison on the tray. Sophia would be expecting Adrian to be dead by morning. But Sophia had forgotten one thing. She wasn't fighting a helpless maid. She was fighting the girl she tried to burn 16 years ago. Nia grabbed the vial and walked toward the bathroom. It was time to switch the poison. It was time to wake the sleeping lion. And when he woke up, he would find that he wasn't alone in this war. Nia stood in the dim silence of the master bedroom, her hand still clutching the silver locket resting on Adrian's chest. The memory of Mrs. Anderson saving her 16 years ago had faded, but it pulled another, more recent memory to the surface. A memory that explained why this dying man's face looked so hauntingly familiar. The cold air of the mansion seemed to heat up. The smell of expensive medicine was replaced by the choking scent of burning rubber and gasoline. Nia closed her eyes, and suddenly she was no longer in the mansion. She was back in the village just 3 weeks ago. It was the peak of summer. The sun was beating down on the dry earth, baking the dirt roads of the rural district where Nia ran her mobile clinic. This was her world. Far away from the city's luxury, this was where she honored Mrs. Anderson's legacy. She was standing under a white canvas tent, wiping sweat from her forehead with her right hand. Her left arm, the prosthetic one, was covered by a long sleeve, as always. Around her, amputees and villagers were waiting for checkups. She was motivating a young boy who had lost his leg, telling him, "Strength isn't in the bone, it's in the will." Suddenly, the peaceful hum of the camp was shattered. The aggressive roar of a high-performance engine tore through the quiet air. Nia looked up to see a sleek black luxury SUV speeding down the narrow, dusty road. It was out of place here, a beast of metal and glass among the ox carts and bicycles. Nia frowned. Who drives like that on these roads? Then disaster struck. It didn't look like an accident, it looked like a malfunction. The front tire of the SUV didn't just pop, it disintegrated. The car swerved violently to the right, crashing through a wooden fence. It slammed into an old oak tree with a bone-shaking impact that sent birds scattering from the branches. Smoke instantly billowed from the engine. "Help! Someone help!" the villagers screamed, dropping their baskets and running, not toward the car but away from it. They were terrified of an explosion. But Nia didn't run away. She ran toward the fire. She sprinted across the dusty field, her nurse's uniform flapping in the wind. By the time she reached the car, flames were already licking at the hood. The heat was intense, singing the eyebrows of anyone who got too close. Inside the crushed vehicle, the driver was slumped over the airbag, unconscious. It was Adrian Anderson, but back then, Nia didn't know him. She just saw a man covered in blood and soot. She grabbed the door handle. Locked. The metal was twisted, jammed shut by the impact. "Hey, can you hear me?" Nia screamed, pounding on the glass. The man inside groaned. He turned his head slightly. His eyes were groggy, barely open. He was trapped and the fire was moving fast toward the fuel tank. Nia looked around. No one was coming to help, she had to do it. She smashed the window with a heavy rock, shards of glass scattering everywhere. She reached inside to unlock the door, but the metal frame was bent too badly. It wouldn't budge. She needed leverage. She needed strength that human muscle didn't have. Nia positioned herself. She planted her feet in the dirt. She grabbed the bent metal frame of the door with her left hand, her prosthetic hand. She didn't feel the heat of the hot metal against her plastic fingers. She squeezed the mechanism tight, locking her grip. "Come on," she gritted her teeth. With a primal scream, she pulled. The servos and steel cables inside her prosthetic arm whirred under the strain. A normal arm might have dislocated. A normal hand might have burned, but the iron hand held firm. With a terrifying shriek of tearing metal, the door was ripped open, its hinges snapping under the unnatural force. Nia didn't waste a second. She reached in and grabbed the man by his collar. Adrian, half-conscious and terrified, instinctively grabbed the first thing he could find. His hand clamped onto Nia's left forearm. He didn't squeeze soft flesh. He didn't feel a pulse. Through the fabric of her sleeve, he felt something hard, rigid, unyielding like a pipe, the hard arm. It was a sensation that imprinted itself on his dying brain. Even through the pain, he registered it. The person saving me has an arm of steel. Nia dragged him out of the wreckage, pulling him across the dirt just as the fuel tank ignited. A deafening explosion erupted behind them, sending a wave of searing heat over their backs. Nia shielded his body with hers, debris raining down around them. Paramedics arrived minutes later. In the chaos, Nia handed him over to the emergency team. She was covered in dust, her hair wild, her arm aching from the strain. She watched the ambulance speed away toward the city. She never gave her name. She never saw his face clearly through the blood. She just went back to work. She thought that was the end of it. The roar of the explosion faded, leaving only the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Nia opened her eyes, snapping back to the dark bedroom. She looked down at Adrian, who was lying motionless in the bed. The realization hit her like a physical blow. "It was you," she whispered, her voice shaking. "The man in the car, the man I saved 3 weeks ago, it was you." The timeline made perfect sense. Sophia had said he had been sick for weeks. But he wasn't sick. He was recovering from the crash. And while he was recovering, Sophia had made her move. Nia looked at the medicine vial in her hand. The pieces of the puzzle clicked together with terrifying clarity. Sophia had tried to kill him with the car accident, sabotaging the tire. When that failed and he survived, she dragged him back here. She bribed the doctors. She forged the marriage papers while he was recovering. And now she was finishing the job with slow-acting poison, making it look like a natural death caused by his injuries. "You survived the fire," Nia whispered to the sleeping Adrian. "And now she is trying to drown you in poison." Nia's grip on the vial tightened. Sophia had made a mistake. She thought she had hired a maid. She didn't know she had hired the one woman who had already defeated death once. Nia walked silently to the bathroom. She poured the bitter almond poison down the sink, watching the deadly liquid swirl away. She ran the tap for a full minute to wash away the scent. Then she opened her bag. She took out a bottle of high-potency liquid vitamins, clear, odorless, and life-saving. She filled Sophia's glass vial with the vitamins. She walked back to the bed and gently lifted Adrian's head. "Drink," she whispered. "This won't kill you, it will make you strong." She tipped the liquid into his mouth. He swallowed instinctively. Nia set the empty vial back on the silver tray. She sat down in the chair in the corner of the room, clutching her prosthetic arm. The same arm that had ripped a car door off its hinges was now ready for a different kind of fight. She would nurse him. She would watch him. She would wait. Sophia had said he was hallucinating, but Nia knew the truth. When he woke up, when his mind cleared from the drugs, he would remember. He wouldn't remember her face, but he would remember the touch. He would remember the iron hand. Nia looked at the door. "You wanted a war, Sophia," she whispered into the darkness. "You just got one." The days that followed were a dangerous game of cat and mouse played out in the shadows of the Anderson mansion. To the outside world, nothing had changed. The sun rose and set, the gardeners trimmed the hedges, and the heavy iron gates remained locked. Inside, Sophia continued her reign of terror, her voice echoing through the halls. She walked with the confidence of a woman who had already won, checking her watch constantly, waiting for the inevitable phone call that would tell her Adrian Anderson had breathed his last. But inside the master bedroom, a miracle was happening in silence. Nia became a ghost in the house. She played her part perfectly. When Sophia was in the room, Nia was the terrified, submissive maid, keeping her head down, her shoulders hunched, holding the tray with trembling hands. She let Sophia insult her. She let Sophia call her garbage and kitchen help. She absorbed the abuse like a sponge, hiding the fire burning in her eyes. But the moment the door clicked shut and Sophia's heels faded down the hallway, Nia transformed. She was no longer the maid, she was the commander of a one-woman army. Every morning and every evening, she took the vial of poison Sophia provided, the deadly bitter almond brew, and poured it down the bathroom sink. In its place, she administered the high-potency vitamins and electrolytes she smuggled in under her uniform. For the first 3 days, Adrian lay still, his body fighting to purge the toxins. He sweat through the silk sheets, tossing and turning in feverish dreams. Nia stayed by his side, wiping his forehead with cool cloths, whispering words of encouragement that she had learned from Mrs. Anderson years ago. "Fight," she whispered into the darkness. "Your mother didn't raise a quitter, fight." By the 4th day, the fever broke. The gray pallor of his skin began to fade, replaced by a faint, healthy flush. His breathing, once a death rattle, became deep and steady. By the 7th day, the sleeping lion was ready to wake. It was a Tuesday morning, exactly 1 week after Nia had arrived. The atmosphere in the mansion was frantic. Tonight was the grand gala, a massive charity event Sophia was hosting at the mansion to honor her sick husband. But Nia knew the truth. It wasn't a party to honor him. It was a party to announce his death and her succession as the sole owner of the Anderson empire. Nia was polishing the wood of the bedroom door when she heard footsteps approaching. Not the usual rhythmic click of Sophia's walk, but the paced, agitated stomping of someone under pressure. Sophia was on the phone, pacing in the hallway just outside the bedroom door. She didn't think anyone was listening. She thought the maid was downstairs and her husband was in a coma. Nia froze. She pressed her back against the wall, her hand sliding into her pocket to grip the small digital voice recorder she had bought days ago. She pressed record. "I don't care what the lawyer says." Sophia's voice hissed through the crack in the door. "The signature on the transfer papers is perfect. I practiced it for months. It matches his handwriting exactly. No one will know it's a forgery." Nia held her breath, her heart pounding against her ribs. There it is, she thought, the confession. "Yes, mother, I know," Sophia continued, her voice dropping to a sinister whisper. "He is still breathing, but barely. The nurse is giving him the double dose today. By the time the guests arrive for the gala tonight, Adrian will be a corpse. We will announce the tragic news, play the grieving widow, and by tomorrow morning, the entire estate will be legally mine." Sophia laughed, a cold, dry sound. "Don't worry. The nurse is an idiot. She does exactly what I tell her. She has no idea she's the one killing him. When the police come, I'll blame it all on her incompetence." The call ended. Sophia took a deep breath, smoothed her dress, and walked away toward the stairs. Nia waited until the silence returned. Then she pulled the recorder out. The red light blinked. She had it, the fraud, the murder plot, the setup, it was all there. She turned and locked the bedroom door, then she walked to the bed. "You can open your eyes now, Mr. Anderson," Nia said softly. "She's gone." The figure in the bed shifted. Adrian Anderson opened his eyes. They weren't the cloudy, drugged eyes of a dying man anymore. They were sharp. They were clear. And they were burning with a rage that could scorch the earth. He sat up slowly, his muscles stiff from weeks of lying down, but his strength was returning. He looked at Nia, then at the door where his wife had just planned his murder. "She plans to frame you," Adrian said, his voice raspy but firm. "I heard her." "She plans a lot of things," Nia replied calmly, pouring him a glass of water. "But she forgot to plan for one thing, that you would survive." Adrian took the glass. His hands shook slightly, not from weakness but from anger. "I remember everything now. The fog is gone. I remember how she forged the marriage certificate while I was recovering from the first accident. I remember her firing my old staff. I remember the taste of that medicine she forced down my throat." He looked up at Nia, his expression softening into confusion and awe. "But I still don't understand one thing. Who are you? You say my mother saved you. But that was years ago. Why risk your life for me now? Why stay in this house when you could have run?" Nia hesitated. She had played the role of the nurse, the maid, the ghost. It was time to show him the truth. She stepped closer to the bed. "I told you I was in the village 3 weeks ago. I told you I saw the car crash." "Yes," Adrian nodded, rubbing his temples. "The crash. I remember the fire. I remember being trapped. I remember screaming for help, but the villagers were too scared to come close." "The door was jammed," Nia said, her voice steady. "The metal was twisted. A normal person couldn't open it." Adrian looked at her, his eyes narrowing as a memory flickered in his mind. He remembered the heat. He remembered the desperate grip of a hand on his collar. He remembered grabbing the rescuer's arm in his panic. "I grabbed the person who saved me," Adrian whispered, his gaze dropping to Nia's left arm, which was hanging by her side. "I grabbed their arm, it didn't feel like skin. It felt hard, like a rock, like iron." Nia didn't speak. She simply raised her left arm. Slowly, deliberately, she rolled up the sleeve of her uniform. There was no brown skin there, there was no muscle. Instead, revealed in the dim light of the bedroom, was a prosthetic limb. Heavy-duty plastic, steel joints scratched and worn from years of service. It was the arm Mrs. Anderson had given her, the iron hand. Adrian stared at it. The breath left his lungs. The image of the nurse with the iron hand from the medical camp slammed into his reality. The puzzle pieces locked together with a deafening click. "It was you," Adrian gasped. He reached out, his fingers trembling, and touched the cold, hard surface of the prosthetic. "At the camp, you ripped the door off. You pulled me from the fire." I didn't know it was you, Nia said softly. I just saw a man in trouble, but when I came here, when I saw the locket. She pointed to the silver chain around his neck. I realized that the man I saved in the dirt was the son of the woman who saved me from the rain. Tears welled in Adrian's eyes. He looked from the plastic arm to Nia's face. You saved me twice, he choked out. You saved me from the fire, and you saved me from the poison. You are the only person in this world who hasn't betrayed me. He gripped her real hand, her right hand, and squeezed it tight. Thank you for giving me my life back. Nia squeezed back. We aren't done yet, sir. Sophia is downstairs preparing to announce your death. She has the lawyers. She has the fake papers. She thinks you are a corpse in this bed. Adrian's expression hardened. The sadness vanished, replaced by the cold, calculating look of a CEO who was about to destroy his competition. She wants a dead husband, Adrian said, swinging his legs over the edge of the bed and standing up. He wobbled for a second, but Nia caught him with her strong left arm, steadying him. He stood tall, finding his balance. Then let's give her a ghost. The party starts at 8. 2 hours from now, Nia said, checking her watch. Help me get dressed, Adrian commanded. Find my suit, the black one. If I'm going to crash my own funeral, I want to look the part. For the next 2 hours, the room was a flurry of silent activity. Nia helped Adrian shave the weeks of stubble from his face. She found his tailored suit hidden in the back of the closet where Sophia hadn't bothered to look. She helped him dress, buttoning his shirt with her one good hand while he regained his strength. He drank the protein shake Nia had prepared. He practiced walking, pacing the length of the room, turning his stumble into a stride. By 10 minutes to 8, the transformation was complete. The skeleton in the bed was gone. Standing before the mirror was Adrian Anderson. He was thin, yes, and his face was gaunt, but his eyes were sharp as diamonds. He looked dangerous. He turned to Nia. She had taken off the maid's apron Sophia had forced her to wear. She stood in her clean nurse's uniform, her head held high, her prosthetic arm hidden once again beneath her sleeve, but no longer in shame. Now it was a weapon ready to be drawn. Are you ready? Adrian asked. Nia nodded. She patted the pocket where the voice recorder sat. I have the evidence. You have the truth. Let's go. Downstairs, the music swelled. The chatter of hundreds of guests drifted up through the floorboards. Sophia was down there, holding a glass of champagne, smiling at her guests, waiting for the moment to tell the world that the king was dead. She had no idea that the king was standing at the top of the stairs, and standing right next to him was the mystery maid she had treated like trash, the woman with the iron hand who was about to shatter her entire world. Adrian opened the bedroom door. The hallway was empty. After you, he said. They walked out of the shadows and toward the light of the grand staircase. The war had begun. The grand hall was a sea of glittering diamonds, black tuxedos, and the soft hum of expensive conversation. 100 of the city's most influential people, bankers, politicians, and socialites, were gathered under the massive crystal chandelier. Waiters moved silently through the crowd with trays of champagne, while a string quartet played a somber melody in the corner. In the center of it all stood Sophia. She looked magnificent in a blood-red gown that trailed behind her like a pool of dark water. She held a crystal flute in one hand, accepting sympathies with a practiced, sorrowful smile. It is a difficult time, she told a prominent banker, dabbing a fake tear from her eye with a silk handkerchief. Adrian is holding on, but the doctors say tonight might be the end. I am just trying to remain strong for the sake of the company. The banker nodded gravely, patting her shoulder. You are very brave, Mrs. Anderson. The board is ready to sign the transfer papers as soon as nature takes its course. Sophia smiled inwardly. Brave, yes, she was brave enough to kill for what she wanted. She checked her phone discreetly. There was no call from the nurse. Why hasn't she called? Sophia felt a flicker of annoyance behind her smile. The fool probably forgot how to use the phone. No matter. I will announce it myself. She decided to take control. She walked to the small stage at the front of the room where a microphone was set up. She tapped the mic with her manicured nail, the amplified rhythmic beat echoing through the speakers and cutting through the music. The room went silent. All eyes turned to her. "Ladies and gentlemen," Sophia began, her voice trembling with perfectly rehearsed emotion. "Thank you all for being here tonight. As you know, my husband, Adrian, has been fighting a terrible, mysterious battle. It breaks my heart to tell you that his condition has worsened significantly in the last hour." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. "I am afraid," Sophia continued, lowering her head to hide the triumph in her eyes, "that by tomorrow morning, the Anderson empire will be under new management. But I promise to carry on his legacy with the same strength he showed." Suddenly, a voice cut through the silence like a clap of thunder. "Since when," the deep baritone voice boomed from the top of the stairs, "do you care about my legacy, Sophia?" The crystal glass in Sophia's hand slipped. It shattered against the marble floor with a piercing crash, spraying champagne over her red dress. She didn't notice. She couldn't move. Every head in the room turned upward. Every breath was held. Standing at the top of the grand staircase, bathed in the golden light of the chandelier, was Adrian Anderson. He wasn't dead. He wasn't a skeleton in a bed. He was standing tall, dressed in a sharp black suit, his shoulders squared, looking down at the crowd with the eyes of a predator. And standing right next to him, steady as a rock in her white nurse's uniform, was Nia, the maid Sophia had despised. "Adrian," Sophia whispered, her face draining of all color. But you're dead," Adrian finished the sentence, taking a slow, deliberate step down the stairs. "Not quite, darling, you look disappointed. Like you've seen a ghost." A murmur of shock erupted in the hall. Whispers flew like wildfire. "He's alive, she said he was dying. Look at him, he looks furious." Sophia's mind raced. This was impossible. The poison, the nurse, the coma. Her eyes darted to Nia. The realization hit her like a physical blow. The quiet maid, the one she had insulted, the one she had trusted to deliver the fatal dose. Sophia's fear turned into blinding, irrational rage. She forgot the crowd. She forgot the cameras. She dropped the microphone and stormed toward the stairs as Adrian and Nia reached the bottom floor. "You!" Sophia screamed, pointing a shaking finger at Nia. "What did you do, you dirty little traitor? I hired you to do a job." "You hired me to be a nurse," Nia said calmly, her voice carrying across the silent room. "Not an executioner." Sophia lost all control. The facade of the elegant, grieving wife shattered, revealing the monster underneath. She raised her hand, aiming a vicious slap at Nia's face. "How dare you speak to me?" Sophia shrieked. "I am the mistress of this house." She swung her hand with all her might. The crowd flinched, but the slap never landed. In a blur of motion, Nia raised her left arm. Her hand connected with Nia's forearm, but instead of the sharp slap of skin on skin, a dull, heavy impact resonated through the room. "Ah!" Sophia screamed, clutching her wrist. She stumbled back, her eyes wide with pain. It felt like she had slapped a wall of steel. Her fingers were bruised instantly. What are you?" Sophia gasped, staring at Nia's arm in horror. Nia didn't flinch. Slowly, with the eyes of the entire city upon her, she reached up and pulled back the sleeve of her uniform. The room fell deadly silent. Revealed under the chandeliers was not a human arm, but a prosthetic limb. Heavy plastic, steel joints, and mechanical tendons glinted in the light. "I am the girl you tried to burn 16 years ago," Nia said, her voice cold and hard. "I am the sister of David, the man you killed for his company. And this," she raised her iron hand, "is the proof that you can't destroy everything you touch." The crowd gasped. 16 years ago, killed, arson. Sophia stumbled back, looking trapped. She looked at the guests, desperate. "Lies, she's lying. Security, throw them out. My husband is hallucinating." No one is going anywhere. Adrian stepped forward, standing shoulder to shoulder with Nia. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the small black voice recorder. He walked to the microphone stand Sophia had abandoned. He pressed play and held it up to the mic. Sophia's voice boomed through the speakers, loud and clear. He is still breathing, but barely. The nurse is giving him the double dose today. By tomorrow morning, the entire estate will be legally mine. When the police come, I'll blame it all on the nurse. The recording ended with a click. The silence in the room was absolute. The guests looked at Sophia with horror and disgust. The grieving wife mask was gone forever. Forged marriage papers, attempted murder, fraud. Adrian listed the crimes, his voice icy. And now we reopen the arson case from 16 years ago. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting louder every second. Nia had called them before they left the bedroom. Sophia looked around wildly. Her allies were backing away. The banker who had comforted her turned his back. Her power was gone. She fell to her knees, sobbing, not tears of remorse but tears of defeat. The heavy front doors burst open. 2 police officers marched in, handcuffs gleaming at their belts. Adrian pointed at Sophia, "Take her away." As Sophia was dragged out of the mansion, screaming and cursing, the room finally exhaled. The heavy doors slammed shut behind her, sealing her fate. The reign of the cruel queen was over. The sirens faded into the night, leaving the grand hall in a stunned silence. The guests, realizing they had been part of a lie, didn't stay long. Slowly, one by one, they offered awkward apologies to Adrian and shuffled out into the night. Within an hour, the mansion was empty. The staff had retreated to the kitchen, too shocked to speak. Adrian and Nia were left alone in the center of the vast, marble hall. The broken champagne glass still lay on the floor, glittering like the ruins of Sophia's empire. Adrian let out a long, heavy breath, his shoulders slumping slightly now that the adrenaline was fading. He turned to Nia. "She's gone," Adrian said quietly. "It's finally over." Nia nodded, her hand instinctively touching her prosthetic arm. "She won't hurt anyone ever again, not my brother, not you, not me." Adrian walked closer to her. The distance between Billionaire and Maid had vanished completely. "You said she killed your brother," Adrian said, his voice gentle. 16 years ago. In case, I remember reading about it in the old files. Nia looked down at the floor. "His name was David. He was kind, just like you. Sophia wanted his company assets. When he refused to sign them over, the fire happened. I lost him and I lost my arm trying to pull him out." She looked up, her dark eyes shining with unshed tears. "Tonight, I didn't just save you, Adrian. I finally gave my brother peace." Adrian reached out and took her left hand, the iron hand in both of his. He held it with reverence, as if it were made of gold, not plastic. "You paid a heavy price," Adrian whispered. "You carried this weight for 16 years. You saved me at the camp when no one else would. You saved me in this house when everyone else turned away. You saved my mother's legacy." He paused, looking around the empty, silent mansion. "This house, it feels different now. The fear is gone, but I cannot run this empire alone. I need someone who understands pain. Someone who knows that strength isn't about money, it's about will." Nia looked at him, confused. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that I don't need a nurse anymore," Adrian said, a small, genuine smile touching his lips. "And I certainly don't need a maid." He reached into his jacket pocket. Nia expected him to pull out a checkbook, to pay her a bonus and send her on her way. But instead, he pulled out a set of keys. Old, heavy brass keys on a silver ring. "These are the keys to the Anderson Charity Foundation's main headquarters," Adrian said, pressing them into Nia's real hand. "My mother built it, but Sophia tried to destroy it. She wanted to shut it down. I want you to rebuild it." Nia stared at the keys in her palm. Her heart skipped a beat. "Me, you," Adrian affirmed. "I am appointing you as the executive director of the foundation. You will have full control. You can build clinics, schools for amputees, shelters, whatever you want. You have the iron hand, Nia. Now use it to lift the world. Nia's lips trembled. This was the dream she had buried deep inside her heart when she was 16. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Adrian said softly. Be my partner in this, not as a servant, but as an equal. Nia closed her fingers around the keys. She looked at the man she had saved, the son of the woman who had saved her. The circle was complete. Yes, Nia whispered, a radiant smile breaking through her stoic mask. Yes, through the high windows of the mansion, the first light of dawn broke through the darkness. The sun was rising on a new day. The long night of fear was finally over. The mansion was never silent again. It was filled with life, with work, and with hope. Sophia went to prison for life, her name eventually forgotten by the city she tried to rule. But Nia became a legend. If you travel to the remote villages today, you won't see a maid scrubbing floors. You will see a woman leading a team of doctors, building hospitals and changing lives. They call her the angel with the iron hand. And standing right beside her always is Adrian Anderson, the man who learned that the most valuable thing in his empire wasn't his money. It was the woman who taught him how to survive the fire. What a journey! From a terrified maid to the director of an empire. Nia proved that your scars don't define you, they make you stronger. Did you expect that twist about the car accident in Chapter 3? And how satisfied were you when Sophia finally got that slap? If you enjoyed this story, please like this video right now. It helps us create more episodes like this. And tell me in the comments, if you were Nia, would you have forgiven Adrian for not recognizing you sooner? Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss a new story. Thanks for watching, and remember, the truth always comes out in the end.